Filters. Things that separate things from other things. I was going to take the water filter out of my fridge to use as a prop here, but I can't figure out how to get the thing off, which is why I haven't replaced it in like 5 years. Anyway, you've no doubt heard of the damage that excessive filter words can do to your writing. So today we're going to talk about what filter words are, why they are usually but not always a problem, and how to get rid of them. Filter words are any words that tell the reader that the scene is being experienced by someone else. They are usually placed before the sensory information, usually right at the beginning of a sentence. He saw the cat leap 12 stories in a single bound and heard its thunderous meow echo across the treetops. That sentence is filtered in two places. He saw and he heard are both filter phrases. Rather than just giving the reader information about what the character saw and heard, we're being reminded that these things are being experienced by the viewpoint character. As we'll talk about in a little bit, this is one of the major problems with filter words because they remind the reader that the story is happening to somebody else rather than just letting the reader experience the sensory information coming from the story. This is why the most common filter words are tied to the five senses: saw, heard, smelt, felt, tasted, and any of their variations or synonyms are all filter words. Words like know, realized, notice, wondered, and occasionally thought are also filter words, but they can also be used in contexts where they aren't filter words, so they're not always filter words. The problem with filter words is not so much what they do as what they distract from. Filter words are often unnecessary, serving only to clutter up the prose, slow the pace, and disengage the reader. I mean, think about it. If you're in a viewpoint character's head, any visual or other sensory information that's in the prose is already implied to have been seen by the character. Same thing with touch, taste, smell, and sound. Filter words don't add any interesting information, and because of this, they can also distract from interesting information. You'll see some people insinuate that filter words are a form of telling and that filter-free prose will tend to be showing. Now, I don't think that the inclusion of filter words automatically moves a sentence from showing to telling, although that assessment is somewhat hindered by the fact that there's no quantifiable way to tell whether a sentence is telling or showing. But I've seen some advice that seems to equate filtering with telling, and I don't think that's entirely true. He saw that the cat was angry is telling. We're telling the reader that the cat is angry rather than showing it. It is also filtered because of the he saw. The cat was angry is unfiltered but still telling. He saw the cat puff out its tail, bare its claws, and heard it hiss is filtered but showing. The cat puffed out its tail, bared its claws, and hissed is both showing and not filtered. So I don't think the two are necessarily the same thing. Removing filter words doesn't automatically make something less telly, nor does including filter words make something less showy. Although I suppose by definition the filter words are telling something to the reader that they already knew, so... Filter words can also cause problems with the flow of your writing. I mean, if you're prefacing every piece of visual information with she saw, you're going to have problems varying the sentence structure. It's very hard to structure prose that's filtered in different ways, so if you're doing a lot of filtering, your prose is going to tend to be very repetitive. There also aren't that many variations on the common sensory filter words that you can employ, so the reader is going to get very tired of seeing saws and reading herds and smelts and things like that. Filtering can also cause some changes in tone. Now, this might not necessarily be a problem, depending on what you want to do, but when you write a section that's heavily filtered, it tends to sound a bit more deliberative and reflective. If you've ever heard someone talk their way through an event, like if they are trying to find their keys, so they're retracing their steps, they'll tend to talk about it with a lot of filtering. When you write with a lot of filtering, your writing will tend to take on that same kind of deliberative, reflective tone. Now, sometimes you may want to do that, which provides a good transition to, so when is filtering actually a good thing? Most of the time it isn't. In fact, if you go right now and cut out all the filter words from your work, it will probably improve by a fair margin. Filtering is really only useful under a few specific circumstances. Most of the time it's just a problem. It's kind of like a cat. Anyway, filters can add a bit of variety to your sentence structure, so throwing one in every now and then can be useful for mixing things up, or if you have a section that just doesn't seem like it's flowing well. Again, don't overdo it. It's something that should be sprinkled in lightly, not spread liberally across your prose. Filters can be an especially bad problem if you're writing in first person. But depending on what you want to do, they can also help with character voice in certain situations. This applies mostly where you have a sort of omniscient first-person perspective. I'm going to get struck by lightning for saying that. If you have a first-person narrator who's also providing a lot of hindsight-informed commentary on the events of the story, then filtering can be useful there. This is what I mean by the first-person omniscient thing, where because they went through the events, they kind of know how everything played out and therefore have kind of an omniscient view, if that makes any sense. I saw the cat leap onto the roof, but I didn't see the murderous intention in his eyes. That sentence is filtered, but the filtering is done to emphasize what the character didn't notice at the time. In this case, we do want to filter because what the narrator actually saw is an important piece of information that the reader needs to get, but at the same time, we want to add information about things that the narrator didn't see. So in this case, we're actually filtering because we're using the filter to filter out some of the information. I think you could probably do the same thing in a third-person limited, but I ran out of time to figure that out before I needed to start filming, so I'm not really sure. Another example of when filtering works is when it sounds better. Man, I've been saying that a lot in videos recently. There are times when the filtered version of a sentence is the best version. Now, these times are rare, but they do happen. Filtering is ultimately a problem with over-explaining or giving too much information to the reader. You're conveying information to the reader that they already know. They know that the character saw this, they know that the character heard this, so you don't need to tell them that the character saw it or heard it. Now, that's true most of the time when it's implied that the character saw or heard these things, but there are probably certain situations where this might not be fully clear to the reader. In these cases, removing the filter words might actually result in reader comprehension issues and might make the piece less clear. So this is a situation where you would actually need what the usual intent is behind a filter word. Another situation where this comes into play is when you really want to emphasize how a certain piece of sensory information affected a character. Emphasizing that sensory information by using a filter word can help to drive home that point to the reader. Again, that should be used very sparingly, as most filtering is unnecessary and is just going to detract from the writing. What's not unnecessary is ending this video, because otherwise it would go on forever. And I can think of no worse hell than being trapped in a video that never ends. Editing a video that never ends, that would be worse. But I would have to film the video that never ends, so I would never actually edit it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this finite length of video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.